we have a special guest on the show today. He took a company from $5 million to $150 million in just 4 years of leading the operations. But he realized that after 35 years of industry experience, he wanted to transition from making millions for someone else to making those millions for himself. He took a leap of faith and made his dream come true. Our guest today is my good friend, Vijay Bachus. I'm Vardan, and you're watching the Vardan Ter-Antonyan Show. Let's go.
Welcome to the Vardan Ter-Antonyan Show. We're sitting down with authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, executives, and industry leaders to talk about business, leadership, and strategy. In a world where competition is ruthless, information is power, and decisions move markets. This is where leaders learn how to win. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the show. Our guest today is my good friend, Vijay Bachus. Welcome to the show, Vijay.
Nice to be here, Vardan. Thanks for having me.
All right. We've known each other for about 8 years now, and I've actually learned a lot from you in the time we've worked together. I remember this particular time when you and I drove to Olathe, Colorado, to perform a quality audit in a contract packaging company. And I remember keeping a detailed journal of how you performed their audit. And after that, everywhere I went to perform a quality audit, I performed it the same way, pretty much, like the same questions, the same issues. So I'm very thankful to you for that because, I seemed to everyone like I really knew what I was doing, even when sometimes I didn't. So I touched a bit on your businesses in the introduction. So talk about your services in a bit more details. What kind of services you provide and what industries do you service?
Okay, well, thanks, Vardan. First of all, thank you for the kind words and feedback. That's very nice of you. I've actually taken that auditing experience that I've had over the years, with about 30 years of auditing experience, and when my time at Charlotte's Web was finalized, I decided that it was time to kind of move on. I learned actually a lot of lessons that you really do a great job of elucidating in your new book, The C-Suite Bible. And I had realized that it was time for me to start making money for myself instead of making money for other people. And I had really taken my skill set, which a large part of that is auditing, and knowing how to audit in an ISO 9001 kind of process setting that would then go into dietary supplements and food. And I knew that would be the basis of my company. So I decided to start my own company, Bacchus GMP, or Bacchus Business Consulting. Bacchus GMP is the website. And really working to help people at really the C-suite level understand the gap between what their experience was and how to run a company. Because as you mentioned, there's a big difference between how to run a company at the director level, senior director level, and then running it at the C-suite level. They're two completely different skill sets. And I had a formula of one, how to audit correctly, and I knew I could package that, as well as how I could take my business consulting and really apply that to a number of people in the industry. So I started working with people like Dollar Tree, Boar's Head, Unilever, Procter and Gamble, and really helping them take a look at where the gaps were in their quality management system or their business operations, close those, and get to where they need to be successful for whatever their goals were.
That's amazing. No, that's really amazing. And it's awesome that you worked with those great companies and directly with the C-suite as well. At a place in the organization where change can really happen. Usually, success in business comes after a lot of failure. Like I remember I used to fail a lot. Like I used to open a lot of businesses and completely flop before I came up with the formula that worked for me. And that was actually the consulting as well, you know. And so, have you had any businesses that you opened and closed? And what lessons have you learned from those? Because business is not easy.
It's not easy. And so let me say it this way. I've been through in my 30 years of experience, it's actually about 35 years now. Um, but in my experience, I've been through all of these situations. So I've brought companies from literally a shack on the side of the road to multi-million dollar multinational corporations through my business processes. And what I really realized along the way was that it's almost a cycle, and there's a cycle to these businesses. And I was lucky to come out of college and really get right into the quality control into the telecom industry. And what do you know? The bubble went up, then the bubble burst. Then I was in, the organic food industry for a while, and what do you know? The bubble went up, and then the bubble burst. And then I was in the hemp industry, and the bubble went up, and then the bubble
Yeah.
burst. And each time, I learned my lessons about those failures, and along the way, what worked going up and what wasn't so great about coming down. And I actually started my company. I say I started about 7 years ago. That's kind of true. I actually started in 2013. So way back before I was even at Charlotte's Web, I had read an article about the things you need to do to become a millionaire. And one of them was start your own business. There's a number of them, pay off your mortgage early, all this kind of stuff. But one of them was start your own business, because you'll learn what you need to do to run a business from the start. So in 2013, I actually started a business where I was doing software programming for a company and programming MRP systems, ERP systems, and functionality websites, things like that, and doing it on the side of everything I was doing with running businesses. And I learned how to do tax preparation, all of that stuff. And so I kind of had a soft launch for about, that was almost 6 years before I actually fully launched the business, and allowed myself to once again take all my experience, learn and set up my business so that I was as fail proof as possible, so to say. And since then, I've had a lot of great years since starting my own company. And I think approaching it slowly like that was smart, rather than fully diving in. And, in 2013, it probably wouldn't have been successful as if I had done the parallel path that I worked on along the way.
Very smart, very smart. So let's talk about specifics of your current businesses. It's basically auditing companies for readiness for GMP, for various kinds of, codes of federal regulation and so on and so forth. Can you talk about what specifically those are? Because this is related to companies who produce food, beverage, dietary supplements, and so on and so basically, what specific audits do you do? And also, I read a little bit that you so you certify people to become auditors. Is that true? So yeah, just go into that a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah.
I all of that is part of my suite. So one thing that I was lucky in my experience is, and I've been called this by the people that I worked with, is I'm a man of all trades, or a jack of all trades, is what you can say. Because I've worked, I've been at every level. I've been everybody from, a bottom line worker all the way up to CEO of my own company. And I've understood and worked with every level in between, both from a quality side and an operational side. So what I did right away was I got lucky, and I had some associations with some really good certification bodies. And my first wave of doing what I was doing was becoming an independent contractor for NSF.
hmm
And with NSF, then I took all my industry experience and became focused on, once again, the food and dietary supplement industry, and executing both the 455-2 standard in dietary supplements, as well as the NSF ANSI 455-3 standard for cosmetics. Then I took all my food experience. I had already had a really good, and I'm GRMA certified on all the 455-2 schemes, basically. So
Hmm.
I became a certified auditor with NSF as an independent contractor, and really worked in the dietary supplement industry, and worked with some of those big clients I was talking about. And then when there was a little dip, I decided, hey, why not go over to the food side? So I reached over to the NSF food side and basically said, hey, I know all of this. I've been an SQF auditor, I've been a GFSI auditor, and I achieved all my certification on that side. So currently I'm also an SQF certified consultant from the SQF Institute,
Hmm.
as well as being able to do BRCGS, as well as FSSC 22,000, and basically any certification scheme. I also do organic,
Hmm.
kosher, all non-GMO, all of the other lower, I don't want to call them lower level certification, but satellite certifications, I'll call them, rather
Right.
than the main product certifications. And then I also joined in with another company called Intertech. So I'm an independent contractor for Intertech as well. And then about a third of my business is working with companies directly outside of quality. So, for example, I'm working with a company in Florida now that's a major dietary supplement company, and I am stepping in their VP of operations role,
Mm.
and part time because I've got all my other stuff going on as well. And that's what I,
Right.
I tell all my clients too. I'm not going to take a full time job. I'm able to provide a lot of help to a lot of people, but I do general business consulting as well too. So business strategy, S&OP planning, financial strategy,
Mhm.
production planning, equipment and facility design, and really that aspect is about a third of my business too. So I do about a third in the quality and auditing, a third in training and consulting, and a third
Mhm.
in business consulting. And I don't get many days off, unfortunately.
Yes, you are a busy man, busy man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really, what I can say is speaking to companies out there, dietary supplements, foods, and so on. If you don't have an in-house specialist in these things, you can't afford not to work with VJ to come in there and get things going, whether it's from operations or business perspective, or from just making sure that you are compliant with all the laws and regulations. Because if FDA or any other regulatory bodies come and audit you and you're not ready, I mean, they can shut you down, and you cannot afford that. So, go with VJ. I've like I said, I've known VJ for 8 years, and he's amazing. He's amazing. So, at Charlotte's Web, we've had a good time just pushing the company forward. And am I right that when you came into Charlotte's Web, it was a $5 million company, and by the time you left, it was $100 million company? Is that true?
It was actually about 150 when I left, and so yeah, when it was a strategic growth, and like I said, I was lucky in that I had been through growth like that before, and led two other companies from really about even smaller than where Charlotte's Web was at the time to multi-million dollar corporations, and that's my business system,
Right.
bringing in my operational principles combined with the quality system in a way that you can ideally limit the amount of butting heads between quality and operations. And that's really the tenet of my business principles, is integrating those two rather than
Right.
having them be at odds in your organization, because that doesn't serve anybody. When you can integrate quality and operations together
Hmm.
in a way that's streamlined and they're both working together according to the regulations, once again,
Right.
then you can really see some amazing results. And I think that's what we were able to do at Charlotte's Web and the other companies that I was able to help, you know,
Right.
succeed, is that, once everybody gets rowing in the same direction, then the results start happening automatically,
Mhm.
and it's synergistic and it starts building on itself. And I think that's another thing that the C-suite um, really needs going forward, is that understanding of the people versus the numbers.
Right.
And right. And when you can incorporate, hey, here's a system where both the numbers are all met and we're measuring KPIs and metrics to get where we're going,
Mhm.
but the people are also engaged, fully believe in the message. And that was also one thing we had at Charlotte's Web that was nice is we had a great message. And, I tell my clients that all the time. How you position yourself on your website,
Mhm.
how you position yourself in the community, how you position yourself, in your marketing, uh, you know,
Mhm.
positioning. All of that definitely will affect not just what your customers are doing, but also what your employees are feeling and the environment in your production facility, in your offices, in your C-suite is all trickle down from the C-suite.
Right.
And the mentality up there will either dictate or cause the failure of many companies. And that's what I've been learning over and over and over and again. It isn't the people below that are the issues in the company. It's
Mhm.
the ability of the C-suite to work with the people that they have to buy into their system
Exactly.
and get where we need to be.
Exactly. No, absolutely. You're right. Do you remember Hess? What did you think about his when he brought in the Navy SEALs, the organization to kind of help out with some stuff? What did you think about those guys?
Okay, well, first of
Jacko
all,
Willink and everything. Yeah.
yeah, I have a lot of respect for Hess, and I've worked with Hess, since Charlotte's Web at another company, Mile High Labs, which I believe you were at as well
Yes.
too. And so yeah, we both had a second engagement there as well too. And the thing with Hess is you know, that's the other thing I realized at that time is I had worked with a lot of C-suites before, but that was the first interaction with somebody who was brought in specifically for a
Yeah.
reason.
Hmm.
And that's when I realized that C-suite is really a different entity
Yes.
than, you know, what I was doing, trying to run the company. And, you know, he was there for a specific reason and he did his job wonderfully.
Yes.
Um, where I think that the skill set probably lacked, and it didn't need to be. He wasn't brought in to
Right.
help us get where we were going in terms of personal growth and, you know, growing ourselves personally. He was there to take the company and launch an IPO.
Right.
And he did that very, very successfully. Um, the bringing in of the Marines was probably not my favorite approach. And I think that it actually, if you want my honest opinion, it wasn't the culture of our company. And that's exactly what I was talking about. The culture of our company at the time was very much caring about the people that were, buying our products and that
Hmm.
needed our products for whatever they were doing in their daily lives. And to come from a very, uh, emotional, heartfelt place to going to a military application of being the, I think it was just a clash of cultures.
Uh-huh.
And I think that, there was a lot of, uh, initial openness to it. And then when it kind of became what it was, people realized this isn't really how Charlotte's Web operates. And
Mm.
and I think that's, back to what I was saying is really having a way and to gauge the health of the company, the
Hmm.
mentality of the company, the needs of the company from an internal employee standpoint
Mm.
is missing from a lot of the C-suite executives today. And I'm not saying that Hess is missing that. That's not what he was there
Right.
for.
Right.
And, I'm saying that um, when you're looking at numbers, once again,
Hmm.
trying to launch an IPO, that's a different skill set and a different
Right.
entity than how do I motivate people and how do I get them to grow and do
Right.
the right thing for their company. And so I
Yeah.
really highly encourage the C-suites I work with to engage companies in things like surveys,
Mhm.
feedback loops, suggestion boxes, so they can understand where the pain points are for these companies. You see things like the JBS strikes that are happening here in
Mm.
Colorado over and over again. And that tells me C-suite doesn't know what they're doing. And I'm sorry, JBS, but when employees are striking on a regular basis, there's a
Right.
disconnect there, because that tells me C-suite is only driving for numbers. They are not considering the human element.
Mm.
And the companies that are successful, Google's, things like that, do exactly the opposite. They consider the human element and still achieve the numbers like I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's these couple of things that I've learned. It's the voice of the customer and the voice of the employees as well.
Yes.
You have to take that into account as well. If you are running a successful operation, both of those have to be in place. Hess, as a sort of a fractional CEO, when he came to Mile High Labs, he came where the company was in like this survival mode.
Uh-huh.
We had 200 to 250 employees, but we weren't generating any revenue. And I wasn't there at the time, but so he came in as a survival mode CEO, and yeah, he did the difficult thing. He did the difficult thing to slim it down to about 20-25 people. So, but there were the right people for the job that needed to be done at the time. And then obviously he looked at, oh, we're too diverse. We're making ingredients. We're making finished products. We're CDMO contract. So it's like, yeah, we're CDMO, but we don't have any clients. So that was, so yeah, he did the right thing there. Slimmed it down. And, from there on, there's the only way you can go is up,
Right.
grow
Right.
if you do things right. So you touched on this a little bit when we were talking about how many things you do. And being in consulting, I imagine you have to travel a lot to clients' sites. How do you manage the work-life balance?
Well, I'm very lucky, and I have an amazing wife who supports me in everything I do. I'm also lucky in that I'm an empty nester and my kids are out of the house. So between those two things, it allows me to travel a lot more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to accommodate this travel schedule.
Right.
But yeah, I do travel a lot. I think in the last 2 years, I circumnavigated the globe 3 times each year
Wow.
in my travels, and I haven't left the country. So that tells you how much I travel within the U.S. And so, the only places I haven't been in the U.S. basically are the upper Northwest, like Maine,
Mhm.
Vermont, those areas. Besides that, I've worked in basically every state besides New England. There doesn't
Mhm.
seem to be a lot of manufacturing in upper New England. So, um, but, uh, but yeah, and it's a hard work-life balance. And I find myself, sometimes I have to make some hard choices
Mhm.
because, um, I once again am lucky in that my name is out there. And I have a lot of people who want my services.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I have to decide, and it's not always a financial decision either.
Right.
Sometimes it's, where can I help the most because I see the need? And there's times, for example, and this is a matter of public record, the Boar's Head incident, when I was
Mhm.
involved in that recall and getting the auditing done to show that Boar's Head had made the changes that they
Mhm.
had. That's a really big matter of public significance. People's lives were,
Yes.
on the line there. A lot of people's, careers were on the line there as well. And I have to make choices. Where
Mhm.
do I apply myself the right way? Um, I'm lucky in that I don't really do any marketing and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I've aligned with NSF and Intertech and myself, I don't have to do that. It's quite the opposite. Where do I apply myself the best? And where do I find
Right.
myself? And sometimes I have to tell people this isn't the right, you
Right.
know, uh, application for me. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that's because the C-suite isn't ready to make the changes
Right.
that they're ready to make. Um, and I feel that I can work with anybody in any situation, from, like you said, survival mode
Right.
to how do we optimize and how do we get more profits going in.
Mm-hmm.
The key
Yeah.
is that, and I've said this to a few people. When I was working as an employee, when I was working at Charlotte's Web, other companies that I'd work with, I had to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I had to achieve. I had to provide results. I had to keep my employees happy. I had to do stuff. Now that I'm in my position now, I get to help people.
Right.
I get to do stuff. It's a privilege and an honor to be able to help people, rather than I was always, oh my God, if I don't do this, I'll lose my job. Right. And that was a huge transformation for me, and really allowed me to open up and help people in the way they needed to be, without that personal failure connection, where I knew I was okay because I own my own business. I'm not going to lose my job. It allowed me to be open and creative enough, without that fear factor, to really say the truth that needs to be said to some of these C-suite executives, to, be open and honest. And they've appreciated that. A lot of times, I think that the people underneath the C-suite, the VPs, the senior directors, get caught up in being yes people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important for the health of the business to be able to say no sometimes, and to be able to say no because of this and this and this strategy. And being able to do that now has made the difference in the success of my business.
Absolutely. Something you said earlier, you said that, you were tired of making other people money. You wanted to make money for yourself. That has been also what I have been feeling for a long time, making these people millions of dollars.
Right.
And yes, I get paid, but it's different. And so yeah, I've always gravitated towards just getting something of my own and everything. So great job. That's awesome. And that's a great advice to others who really want to succeed in life, is to find a situation where you get to help people. You don't, it's not forced upon you. It's, you help whoever you want to help or you can help, and be fulfilled in what you're doing as well. So that's amazing, BJ. So last question, and this is a difficult one, because in the age of AI, everyone is feeling it. It's the fear of being, your what you do for a living to taken away by AI and robots and things of that sort. So a couple of months ago, yeah, at Mile High Labs, everyone was talking about OSHA inspections and so on and so forth. And so then I was like, okay, well, how difficult would it be? Does it really exist, or how difficult would it be to create a robot who goes around your manufacturing? Like in the
Right.
Matrix, you download certain regulations in his chip, and then he goes around and finds issues and creates documentation necessary to pass inspections and so on. So turns out a robot like that does not exist right now, but but ChatGPT literally told me, "Oh, it doesn't exist, but here are the steps that are lacking, and here's what you need to do to create it," or something like that. And we're pretty close to that, maybe in 5 or 10 years or so. And do you have any thoughts or fears about that type of a thing?
Well, I have thoughts about it. The fears I have come from watching the Terminator movies, but
Yes.
but in terms of the thoughts I have, is that AI needs to have more regulations, and
Yes.
as anything does, when we learn, you know, we were children were smoking cigarettes when they first came out, and we used to have leaded gasoline in all our cars, not more than, 40 years ago. And so we learned as a species to deal with these discoveries that we get. And eventually we somehow get them right along the way. Nuclear weapons, another case here in
Right.
existence. And so, we haven't luckily used them again after we realized the horror of using those again. So we eventually do learn as a species, and that's got to happen. In terms of what you're speaking of specifically,
Mhm.
I have dabbled into AI myself as well because I am so busy. And this was a question for myself too. How do I do this ethically in a way that,
Mhm.
if I'm charging people for my services and I'm using AI to help me in my services, how do I ethically do that? Where you're right, AI has already become intelligent enough to understand certification schemes, standards like the 455-2 standard,
Mhm.
ISO standards, and they understand what those requirements are for those standards. So, um, I really drew a line where I said, okay, anything where I need to think, I'm not going to use AI for.
Mhm.
Anything that's a summary or, you know, a restatement of things that I already have said, I can go ahead and
Mhm.
use AI for that, where it's just, you know, motions that I'm going through versus generating the
Exactly.
thought
It
independently,
just gives you
right?
more efficiency in what you're doing. Yeah, but ChatGPT even says it at the bottom. Um, I may be wrong. I make
And sometimes they
mistakes.
are. I
Y-
always review anything that I
Yeah.
use it for,
Yeah.
and a lot of times there are errors there, and
Yes.
you have to be very careful with that. And that's going to get fixed eventually too.
Yeah.
Our cell phones used to be, this big, and have a charging station in our car, so we'll get it right eventually. But in terms of what you're talking about, I believe that, I agree that it probably doesn't exist, but it would not be hard. It
Right.
would not be hard to take the robots that I have at the United Club that collect all the dishes. And, I think you've seen it if you've ever been to the United Club.
Right.
They have little robots that go along and you put your dishes in them and they take them back to the dishwashing area and so on. That's not much different from what you're talking about. And it's just a matter of programming in the codes and standards and
Mhm.
giving them examples of what is acceptable, what's not, just like you would a company when you're creating specifications.
Mhm.
And that will happen. Now, deploying that robot, having that robot fly from Atlanta to
Right.
Missouri to chain in, and then going to Boston after that, and then flying back to Denver, that the robot might not get that yet. But so deployment of the robot might be more of an issue than creating the robot, but that capability exists. And I think really we're at a point right now where my fear once again isn't that big because I'm also looking at, hey, I'm going to retire in a few years. I'm
Mhm.
not going to be around doing this that much longer. And that's my goal. My goal is, retire within, 5 to 10 years and be done. And really,
Yes.
my real goal is to retire within 3 to 5 years. And
That's
so
amazing.
hopefully I'll not have to deal with AI that much in terms of the workplace anymore. But what I see here is this is another. I talked about those bubbles and bursts that I was in. This is it. We're at the front end of this. We've just barely started with AI.
Yeah.
Everybody, and the opportunities here are unbelievable. This is going to change the future of business. And either you learn it now or you miss the boat. And I can
Yes.
guarantee that to you right now. Either you jump in on, at first I was like, oh, I'm going to push back, keep on doing old school. I was like, there's no way. I have to integrate and learn and become up to date with AI because otherwise I will be left behind.
Yes.
And I'll be left behind in 2 years. I won't be able to retire because in 2 years I'll be so left behind and so obsolete that it won't matter anymore. And so
Right.
this is a game-changing deal right now. This is bigger than the telecom bubble. This is bigger than the hemp bubble. This is the future of the world.
Right.
And either you get on board right now or you miss the train. And that's where we're at right now.
Vijay, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to be on the show. Before we finish, I wanted to make sure people know how to contact you. So your email is bacchusgmp.com and peakgmp.com. Is that true? Okay.
So yeah, I have two
Yeah.
websites.
Hmm.
One is really focused on the consulting side, and that's Bacchus, BACHUS GMP.com. The other side is really focused on the certification side.
Mhm.
So those schemes I was talking about, 455-2, SQF, BRCGS, FSSC 2000, ISO schemes, non-GMO. And that website is called peakgmp.com. Peak like a mountain peak, PEAKGMP.com. My email is Vijay, VIJAY, at BacchusGMP.com. And you can contact me through any of those methods. I'm actually going to be working on a website revision to get some more automation and AI into my websites as well too. But thank you so much for having me on the show, Vardan. It's been wonderful. I've loved discussing with you. I've loved our interaction through the years, and I wish you the best with your book and your podcast. And let me know how I can help you in any way going forward.
Thank you so much, Vijay.
Take care, Vardan. Bye-bye.
Bye.